Spatial convolution filtering in principal component analysis. Just a few words about this here as we're getting close to the end of the evening. This is a 3-channel color composite from a principal component analysis of Mount St. Helens Landsat 7 TM from August 22nd of 1999. Components 3, 2, and 1, and this principal component analysis accounted for approximately 99%. The first 3 components accounted for approximately 99% of the variance in the 6-channel data set that this was extracted from. So first, spatial convolution filtering, just real quickly. Spatial convolution filtering, this is an image enhancement technique that is used quite a lot. It's used all over the place, really, but in remote sensing we use it most often as a way of enhancing images, making them more easily interpretable. And typically they're done with a kernel. The normal sizes are square. 3 by 3, 5 by 5, 7 by 7. There are some other odd shapes, but they work on a relatively simple process of having the center pixel being recalculated based on a fairly simple, normally polynomial equation using the 8 or any number of pixels that surround the central pixel. So these are sometimes called local filters, where you're looking at values in the local area of a central location. And so, typically there are coefficients that are applied, usually fairly simply, to the 9. This is in the 3 by 3 example, to the 9 pixels, and then the center pixel is calculated based on some combination of these surrounding pixels in the locality. These are some of the shapes that are commonly used, and so you can see here that the calculation that's done is done on a summation of the brightness values, and then this is a low frequency filter, so this is an average filter where you're summing brightness values using a coefficient, and you're taking an average of that, and then this is just another expression of that same equation here. And so typically, a moving window is passed over the image, this being the kernel. It moves along from upper left to lower right, and new values are calculated for the center pixel, as you can see here in this example. And then these are just some examples of what some of the different types of filters that are in use, spatial convolution filters that are in use, and their visual effects on the images. This is, you could say, pretty much the raw image here. It is stretched, contrast stretched, probably linear stretch, and then this is a low frequency or a smoothing filter. This is a median, which is also smoothing, and then the max, which is it's something of a smoothing. The high frequency is an edge enhancement filter, and then the minimum is also a different, more of a kind of a detail filter. In this instance, that's certainly what it looks like. The median, this is just some discussion of some of the different types of low pass filters or smoothing filters, minimum and maximum filters. These are low pass or high pass filters, depending on whether a minimum or a maximum is used. Okay, so principal components analysis. Principal components analysis is a technique that's used, a statistical technique that was it's a little over 100 years old, that was developed to reduce the amount of correlation between very large matrix data sets where you have very large tables, multiple variables, and multiple cases or features. So in this case, the case or the feature or the row is the pixel, and the variables are the number of channels. And so we have most experience working with 6 channels, or 6 dimensions, I guess you could say, and that's sometimes used in principal components analysis. You talk about variables as dimensions of the data, and particularly in remote sensing that term is used, although not necessarily used in social statistics, for instance. And so the idea is to reduce the number of dimensions down to 3 or less sometimes. So the simple example here is you can see a 2-channel scatter plot, and this is the cluster of values on the scatter plot. They are linear, and so we're using mean values here, the mean of channel 1, the mean of channel 2, and so the variances are very high around these. And so when you calculate new what in effect is the regression line, this is the first component, principal component 1, and principal component 1 normally in a multidimensional data set accounts for up to around approximately 90% of the variance in this multidimensional data set. The second component is always orthogonal to the first component, so it is not correlated. There is no correlation between the first and the second component, and the third component is orthogonal to all 3 of these, so it would be coming straight out of the screen here. And so it's not correlated in any way to either of these other 2 dimensions. And so by the time you get through the first 3 components, you're really looking at something like 98–99% of the variance being accounted for in the data set. And so these are just some examples of some of the values that are generated as principal component analysis is executed. And so in this instance here, you can see the eigenvalues are in effect variances which don't have much meaning until they're compared to the total variance for the data set. And so for instance here you can see this is the variance accounted for by the first eigenvalue, or the first principal component, and the percentage of the total variance that's accounted for is around almost 85% of the total variance in the data set just by the first component. So it is highly, this data is highly correlated one to the other. The raw data is, but the components are not. That's part of the beauty of this kind of analysis. And so again, these are eigenvectors that are computed for the covariance matrix. Again, this is another set of values that you get from the principal component analysis. And here you can see the correlations between the channels and the components. And components we can now begin to think of as new channels, or as newly estimated values on pixels for a given data set, a given multidimensional data set. In this case, we're probably going to be working with a 6-channel image. So it's possible, as we see, it's possible to compute a new value for a pixel, principal component number 1, using this following equation. And so you can see it's based on the values that are in the 6 channels or 7 channels in this one. This is a 7-channel image, and so the new brightness value that's calculated is based on these 7 brightness values that are that we have collected for that image. And so this is just a mind blower here. Here's the new brightness value, and here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 arguments there that are calculating that first brightness value. And then here it's done with the raw values, and you can see it calculates out to a value of 119.53, which is has not that much meaning to us until you put it into a into an image space. And so this is just an example of a calculated principal component image. But I would take you back to this first image if you're interested in principal components, and you are, to show you how really unbelievably vivid these images can be, and how much of the redundancy that you find in these multidimensional data sets you can squeeze out with what are in effect decorrelated images where the different channels have virtually zero correlation between them, because they are principal components.